Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 21st Century Renaissance. I am your host, Dr. Michael Lopiano. I am joined today by my friend Kara Nodrik, who is joining us today from Poland. Kara is an accomplished YouTuber, an accomplished streamer, and pioneer of various corners of the internet. So we are excited to have her with us today. To have a conversation about some of her work and about our principal questions of the 21st Century Renaissance. So welcome, Kara. Great to have you here.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Michael, did you have some questions?
You know what, Kara, I do happen to have questions. I think I always make sure to come prepared to my interview with at least one question to ask my guests. So I have two for you, actually. So here on 21st Century Renaissance, I've been thinking with my guests quite regularly on this question of whether a 21st century Renaissance is ongoing. So at first instance, I'm going to pose this question to you: is a 21st century Renaissance ongoing? But in the second place, I also want to ask you what that idea of Renaissance or of a 21st century Renaissance might mean to you. So what do you think?
There is definitely a lot of changes that are happening starting from the invention of the internet. So I do believe like the moment the internet went global, was not like just for the very special people, but the moment it was accessible to general public, we entered into the Renaissance stage, and we are still adjusting to it. Like our whole societies are trying to kind of adapt to it and see if we can use it for advantage. And like a lot of people use it for education, which is again wisdom gathering. And I'm glad like there are a lot of free resources out there. Yeah, we definitely do go through a phase of Renaissance at the moment. That's my view.
Okay, all right. So in listening to the way that you're describing the Renaissance, it sounds like you are thinking in particular about modes of communication, modes of knowledge exchange, modes of learning, maybe education as well, certainly very key components of the Renaissance. In what way in particular are you participating in this process? How have you found that people are being affected, say, by this internet technological shift in the way that we interact with one another?
So I have a long story about it.
Let's hear it.
I grew up in the times where internet wasn't a thing as a child, and we received knowledge from the TV set, radio station, and the Soviet Union still was a thing. So I might say I existed in a bubble, sort of thing. Then with the introduction of the internet and access to different ideological bubbles, let's say, I was able to learn from them and to compare notes. Of course, it became my passion. I literally wrote on the manifesto of my YouTube channel. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to understand how other people are thinking. And the way the thinking is formed is by education, experiences, information that the people receive. It's not that we are all kind of empty vessels that we are based on the information what we received. No, what I noticed, two people from the same environment, from the same thought bubble, or like the same kind of, I don't know, ideology, are completely different and have completely different values, and actually respond to the same occurrence in the opposite manner. Like some are fight, some run. Let's say. I was trying to explore that, like why is that difference? And all I learned after all those years, everything is individual. It depends on a person. It depends on parents. It's not only the social, but it's also biological. It depends if you actually have a pain in your back at the moment. Like only that. So I understand the idea of generalization and like, oh, in general, this group is that. Yeah, we needed to simplify our like to make our decisions simpler. We just generalize a little bit. We wing it in order to make a decision, because we cannot go and know in detail what happens next, how another person will react. We can only guess. Yeah. I don't know if it made sense.
Yeah. No, yes, it sounds a lot like, and certainly tell me if I've got this wrong. It sounds like you, based on your experience, right, growing up in the Soviet Union and then going through this process of the Soviet Union going away, the disappearance of this kind of closed bubble. I think one of the popular terms we like to use today with the internet is an echo chamber, right? That the disappearance of this closed cultural zone sounds like it was this interesting opportunity, or this transformative, yes, but very motivating opportunity for you to come into contact with other perspectives, when formerly you were under the impression that there was one way that the world was, and that this happened very dramatically, that suddenly it went from one to a myriad of potential ways of viewing or interpreting the world. And that event has moved you to desire to compare and to understand the nature of a world in which there are so many perspectives, all the way down to the level of the individual. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, you understood it perfectly. I had a tool for understanding how the other person, individual, thinks. So I have a podcast called Line by Line, which would be sort of, I invite guests or a guest or two guests to read song lyrics that they choose, and then see what stands out from that song lyric. How do they perceive it? Like, I understand that music is beautiful and we listen to it, but everybody understands music differently. Everybody notices completely different information. Things that are relevant to them, things that are attached to their memories. Yeah, I had an example of one song being interpreted in 5 different ways. Sound of Silence. It was like everybody understands the song Sound of Silence in many different ways, and like all of them are surprising, educational, really good. So that's what I do at the moment.
So you have, so you and I have had I've had an opportunity to be on a couple episodes of your Line by Line podcast, which was actually a lot of fun. Got to share a couple songs. Well, 2 songs that I particularly like that I love to share with my students, and then I think we ended up sort of branching out into talking about a Russian folk song, which was a nice surprise that we both knew it. By the way, if you're listening, you're welcome to go check out Kara's channel and see our 2 episodes. They're quite fun. I quite like them.
I will write it in the comments to that video after Michael publishes it. There will be like
Yes.
first comment.
Yes. Be sure to check in the comments. Yeah. Okay. So for you, these social networking tools, which have been enabled by this, say, introduction of the internet as this dramatically new revolutionary technology, you are primarily piloting a course with these tools in order to compare and understand individuals' perspectives better, at least. And you have several frameworks that you do that in.
Yes.
So let me ask you this question, right? Why should someone attempt to try to understand someone's perspective? Because, let me frame this question a bit for you, right? As a sort of kind of devil's advocate thing, right? I could say, yes, okay, great, 2 thumbs up, great endeavor, yes, do it, exciting. But we hear kind of a lot of emptiness behind this idea of, there's criticisms, let's say, of the multiculti that doesn't actually celebrate any particular perspective. It has this veneer of appreciating multiple perspectives while in fact giving reverence to none of them. It can be easy sort of from say this critique that's out there to be like, any attempt to understand lots of perspectives is really just an excuse for devaluing all perspectives. So what value do you see, right, coming at this, as I said, as a devil's advocate, right? What value do you see in attempting to understand these perspectives? What has your experience been? What value have you come into contact with as a result of these explorations?
Interestingly enough, I started by trying to find the best possible way of functioning in the society, the best possible religion, the best possible country, like the best possible culture. So what I wanted to choose at the beginning, which one is the better one for the rest of the world to function. Because what I noticed is like every person who educated in a certain bubble is believed like completely convinced, backed up by all the biases, that their bubble is the best and the rest of the world who didn't follow the same ideology is wrong. They're all wrong. They have to be convinced, they have to be conquered, they have to like be in that bubble. So like it feels like every ideological bubble does want to expand and kind of make its case and get larger population of people. So I was trying to understand, is there any perfect bubble actually? Like, is there any perfect society that functions really well and people are happy? Or like some societies actually do not value happiness. It has to be stoic, it has to be pain, it has to be hurt, and then they feel meaning in life. So I try to understand that, and having at the back of my mind that everybody is different, everybody has different needs. And I try to reach to popular TV shows to see how would they present the future, utopia, dystopia, all of it. Like, how did they see the future? I particularly enjoy Star Trek. The storytelling of Star Trek is my favorite. And so there is this ship that that has to go into the unknown and boldly explore it. On this ship is the crew that consists of many different cultures, many different ideologies that came from different systems. So how do they cooperate with each other? And I understand that people who know the customs of other cultures and also accepting of the fact that it's okay to be different cooperate well together. And people who do not know of the customs also judge other customs as like worse. They do not cooperate well. The ship with such team members doesn't fly far, doesn't explore, doesn't reach the agenda. So yeah, that's as far as I got, is the idea that there are certain mindset characteristics that allow for a good teamwork and achieving the goal. Now, for our universe and like our planet, people have different goals. Some people want to gather wealth. Some people want to plant forests, and people cannot agree on the common goal. I'm trying to see if I can understand and find solutions, maybe recommendations for the future generations. I don't have the big ego-driven desire. I kind of like just very modestly want to contribute.
I see. I understand. So right, something like you're not trying to be the YouTube millionaire who just rakes in hundreds of millions of hits and then takes the money and does like flashy things to continue to feed the online beast or something like that. So okay, so interesting. So to sort of summarize your point here, and again, please let me know if I've understood this correctly. So it sounds like there is value in understanding various cultures or understanding various perspectives and modes of seeing and engaging the world, or engaging with the world, I should say, that allow certain goals to be reached. There are certain goals out there. There are certain things that might be desirable to accomplish, right? You have this metaphor of Star Trek. It's a crew. Their mission is to explore, right? Their mission, right, to boldly go, famously, this famous English violation of typical English syntax, to boldly go where I forget what it is, where no one or no life form or something like that has gone before, right? So it's an exploratory mission. It's an exploratory mission. And this particular way of engaging with one another, of engaging with the world, of trying to understand perspectives, is useful in the pursuit of certain values, of certain overarching values. In your experience, what are some of those values? Perhaps has it been toward an exploratory goal? You say, I think you also mentioned something like cooperation. Would you be able to elaborate a little more on what you mean by that?
So cooperation without suppression, let's say. So finding the best possible candidate for a job on a ship, so that candidate can perform the task without suppressing the individuality of that, let's say, new crew member. So like it's cooperation and also understanding and respect for other people's creatures' differences, in a way. Like not on Star Trek, but on the Orville, there was an engineer who was just a blob of goo, and his personality was could desire a little bit more, but his technical skills he could stretch himself into a liquid and go and like repair things on the ship, which is like really good. And human people cannot do it. And there had to be some sort of acceptance of the differences, but also elevating the pluses. And for that creature, in order to function properly on board of the ship, he also had to understand that he cannot like slide into women's showers and spy, for example. Like he had to like also adhere to some rules.
Good thing
So that
good thing to learn.
yeah. So the idea would be values that are kind of a social contract that people keep. And then how do you manage the situation where people do not want to keep social contracts? There was again an interesting episode of the Orville note. Orville is sort of like Star Trek, but funnier. Seth MacFarlane is the one who did it. Like I also recommend it. It's an interesting mind twister. Like you have to think hard. Like it's not as easy as it seems. Everything. Yeah. So in Orville, they show the society where everybody born under astrological sign of a scorpion, they call it Gajiliak, had to be immediately incarcerated. Immediately. Like they're like, oh my God, these are immediately bad people. Without giving them a chance, like without, it's just like, they will just put them in incarceration. And like without even giving a proper education, socialization. So the people in their incarceration would like live by their own rules, knowing that they're bad and the outcast of the society, which again was a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. So I really like how they show this contrast between accepting the differences and not only not accepting the difference, but even presumptuously deciding that this chunk of people is that. Like, so I thought it's an interesting parody on our society a little bit.
Yeah, well, it reminds me, speaking of the Soviet Union, right? It reminds me a lot of the the Soviet policy toward the kulaks. So the idea, right? Well, I think it's in the proclamation of the Red Terror in 1918, 1919. It's like the idea is, well, if you're well, okay, so kulak is a special type of an emancipated, somewhat better off farmer. I think the Russian word, and correct me if I'm wrong, this means a fist, does it not?
Kulak. That's kulak. The direct translation of kulak would be the fist. Yes.
Fist. Okay. Very good.
Kulaki.
So right, this idea is like, okay, well, if you're a little bit better off, as a farmer, like clearly you're exploiting other people, and therefore, if you're descended from one of these people, you must also be bad, because if you're from this descent, you've clearly been inculcated in these values where you exploit people. So that gives the state the license to imprison you. If you're a kulak, if you're the son of a kulak, if you're the grandson, the whole lineage has to go, right? And it gives everybody else around you license to just take your property, because after all, you're a thief and an exploiter.
Okay. With the whole lineage, I come on my mother's side from a family that owned 7 hills in Cherkasy. It's like it's not far from Chechnya. It's like one of those Muslim countries at the south. And 7 hills, 6,000 cattle, a lot of let's say peasants that worked the field. They weren't slaves, they were paid, but they lived in the field. And so when say like Soviet Union came, they gathered the male population and they sent 4 brothers to Siberia. They sent the father, the old man, to Siberia, and actually their children, anyone who is older than the year 14. So the last male was my grandfather. He was 13 at that time. And he and I think 7 of his sisters and his mom were given an apartment which was kommunalka. It's a common apartment with like a 1 bathroom on the floor that every other family uses, and like 1 kitchen, but it was uncomparably horrible living conditions. And all the males were removed. I mean, except the children. Like they kept the children because the children's had the potential to be re-socialized. So I actually come from the family of kulaks, and again, I am the descendant. They didn't eliminate me. So
And thank God. Yeah.
I know that cringe laughter.
Well, yeah. Well, no, it's.
I can never get this land back, and I am also
You
not
can
the one deserving.
land, you said, yeah.
Yeah, 7 hills.
7 hills. You could have had your own Rome.
My what?
You could have had your own Rome with those 7 hills.
Oh yeah.
Rome
Rome.
having been built on 7 hills.
Oh yeah, that's yeah, that's
Yes,
true.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to say, you said this Komanelka. I want to say there was an interview not long ago. Michael Malice and Jordan Peterson talked about this. Michael Malice recently, I forget the title of his recent book, but he spoke specifically about this, right? And of course, the idea that in the Komanelka, because you're in such tight quarters and you have 1 bathroom, you're incentivized to report your neighbor to the state as a traitor, so that you get more room.
100% true. Like it stayed. Like Michael, you can't believe like Soviet Union had been gone for a long time, but the mindset of the phone being tapped and the neighbors reporting you somewhere, that mindset still exists. So I talked to friends from Russia and Belarus, and they are actually still scared that if they have any anti-governmental thoughts that are spoken in any way out loud, somebody might hear it, the neighbor might hear it, or your phone is wiretapped and you will be reported. And actually that fear is a good control tool. So what you do, you prevent people from talking to each other, to kind of have those outrageous ideas that your government might be wrong. And like they like I've seen a lot in the media, people judging Russians for not but they come from that mindset. They are afraid to voice their concerns out loud, because every people who, like every person who did it courageously publicly was executed. Like they are there is like examples that they're like, oh, look at that guy, oh, you remember how courageous he was? Yeah, now look at him now.
Yeah.
And people do have things to lose. They do have families. They do have livelihoods. Yeah, I feel deeply sorry for that predicament.
It's interesting to consider, and I wonder how many people truly can envision what it's like to be in such an environment where you are essentially constantly afraid of everything you say. You're so carefully policing of your thoughts because maybe potentially 1 crack in the foundation could mean your whole family gets taken away somewhere, and if not killed, right, then scattered somewhere across the interior of the country in a labor camp for 25 years. And I think Solzhenitsyn talks about this, right? Of course, if you are going to a camp, almost certainly you are not going to the same camp as your wife. Almost certainly you are not going to the same camp as your children. They're all being sent to different camps so that you can be distanced from your family and you could be re-educated by the state into state ideology, and so that you'll stay in the place that you've been distributed to, right? It lessens the chance that you'll go back. as part of this kind of, there's been, I know historians talk about this as an interior colonization of the Soviet Union, right? Part of the mission of the Gulag Archipelago was also to go through an interior colonization of the lands of the Soviet Union, both to make them more culturally Russian, but also to make them more culturally Soviet, and therefore more closely connected to the state, something like that.
I mean, if you will introduce this one big idea to people and eliminate people who oppose your big idea, you can control the masses pretty well. So basically, I remember there was another tool for keeping the status quo. Let's say is the tool would be demonization of the Western ideology. So Western ideology was portrayed as deeply decadent. They would use the extreme examples and present them as normal. Like, it's normal in there. You see, it happens all the time. And they would take this one horrible case that happened somewhere in Oklahoma, let's say. And they would show it around as a poster representation of what it's like to be a Westerner.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I've seen propaganda posters, right, with like, there's a lot of Soviet propaganda that holds up the KKK from the 1950s and 1960s, right, where they're just like the face of American freedom or something like that, right? It says in Russian. It's like, here's your American values. Yeah. So interesting. So was this still very much prevalent, like when you were young, when you were growing up in the Soviet Union and I guess the early Russian Federation at the time? Like, what was that like? I hear all these things about, like, the difficulty of the 90s, and it's I'm curious actually to hear more about this.
I mean, I was a kid. So for me, it was like, as a child, they would not show much of the horrible, decadent Western world. To a child, they would be like, the best thing you can be is to be a pioneer, and you can have this red scarf, and and everybody, like, if you go into the world, there is a value to you. Your place is predetermined. You are useful. You are important with that thing, scarf, red scarf, galstuk, and. And then after Soviet Union broke down, we had a massive book change. So they took away the Soviet books and they gave the new books. And then the new books was the opposite. I got like immediately bombarded with pioneers are bad.
Okay.
And it was like, what? My world is changed. Now pioneers are bad? Like, am I not? No, you're like, the pioneers is a representation of suppressive society and ideology. No, what we want to do right now is to be a new, open and capitalistic country. And they're like, okay, now I have to learn about capitalism as a child. And then there is a flood of sneakers, Nike, Adidas. Here are all the cool stuff, Coca-Cola, yeah! And McDonald's we could only see on TV because nobody could afford those franchise fees. And like, in the poor country. Like, the reason why they were not immediately McDonald's, because McDonald's expects a certain franchise fee for restaurant owners to open them. And so there was only one exclusive McDonald's in Kiev. And one very exclusive McDonald's later on in Odessa, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, which was like, so, and then the Western culture was heavily promoted, and what I noticed, it was like the advertising. If you wear certain type of clothes, then your status on the community scale is up. Like, for example, if you have a red scarf during Soviet Union, you're a pioneer, your status is high up, you're a respected member of society because you're useful. Pioneers are like sort of Boy Scouts. That's the value. And with Western ideology, it was like, if you wear Adidas clothes, then this means you are successful and success is good. And so your status is up. So the orientation was not towards the value of a human being as a useful member of society, but the Western ideology that I got introduced to as a child, you have to accumulate as much stuff as possible, which is again coming from because somebody needed to earn on it. You're right, Michael. Well, right now, from perspective of time, I do see a problem with it. Back in the day, as a child, I did not see a problem with it. And we even had cases of friends murdering each other for a pair of sneakers. Oh. That's how shitty life became in the 90s. And I'm like making it more beautiful. It was way worse.
Yeah. I mean, right, of course, I'm coming at this from a completely different background, right? I've talked about this with friends from Ukraine or friends from Russia, or to talk about their experiences or their memories of that, or things like even friends from Poland, right, in the 1980s, like thinking about 1980s, early 1990s, about like bread lines and things like that, and what a strange time it was in that decade. And it's interesting to hear you comment on that same sort of materialistic orientation of the way that quote unquote Western values were introduced into the former Soviet Union. One of the reasons that I think I've felt connection to at least traditional Slavic cultures, be it Western Slavic or Eastern Slavic, is an appreciation for what is human. I too also noticed this growing up in the 90s, but growing up in the 90s in America and growing up in the early 2000s, that there was this sort of pressure to be like, no, you should just like more stuff. You should go and get a better job so you can earn more money, so you can buy more stuff, so you can, because that's what's going to make your life worth living. So you can go on better vacations, so you can go on cooler trips, so you can, I don't even know, so you can like indulge in your collecting hobby. Yeah, like that's what I remember that as a kid, right? Like, hey, Star Wars action figures are cool. You like those, right? I was like, yeah, they're cool. You should collect as many as you can. I was like, okay. I remember becoming a teenager and eventually being like, well, I started to move away from that. Like, okay, toys or video games, right? There was a lot of pressure to just kind of amass, especially tech, video games, whatever. You just amass this because it's important. Why? It is, just is. You should believe that it is. And if you don't, then you should watch more TV or go on the internet and read the right sites or something like that. And I remember reaching a certain point with this I was probably like 12 or 13, and my parents, my family would come to me most generously and be like, hey, we love you. What do you want for Christmas? Tell us. And I remember I shocked them one year because they were like, do you want this new video game? Like, do you want this new toy? Whatever, like, it's new, it's out there, you can have it, whatever you've been so good, you've done so well in school, like, what would you like? You can have whatever you want. And I was just like, hello, if you could buy, I have a list of 30 books that I just came up with. Could you give me books? And they're like, you want books? I was like, only books. Buy me nothing but books. And then my idea was like, okay, if each person bought me one book, then I could like talk to them about that book. That was,
right. Oh my God. You're like, with your presence, like attached to a presence, they have to read the book.
Well, that was kind of the idea. I was like, then, well, because people don't talk to me about video games. That was my thing. Like, I was getting lonely. It was very lonely to like play with toys and video games because I was always alone. I was like, but if you buy the book, if you buy me the book, then we can talk, right? Then we can talk and we can have a conversation and we can, there are no podcasts or anything like this. So it was like, you had to have actual people to talk about whatever with you, right? And that didn't quite work because they were just like, oh, he asked for a list of books. We're just going to buy him all the books. And I was like, no, thank you, but also that wasn't the idea, but all right.
The idea would be that you read the book and then you give it to me, and then I read the book, and then we talk about it and we spend time together. The idea is time together discussing the book and then increasing knowledge. And they're like, don't make us read the book.
Yeah, that was it. And then I would try to get like later when I was in college, I was like, oh, okay, you guys put such a premium on me doing well in school and getting a good education. Let's talk about, I remember I bought my parents, God bless them, I bought them copies of the Divine Comedy. And I was like, I read the Divine Comedy, and I was just like, guys, read the Divine Comedy. And they did, right? They started to read it little by little. But I guess I also didn't know how to organize things on my side to be like, okay, now let's have a seminar or something like that. I was just like, we'll sit down and have coffee, and then they'll just like have questions about the Divine Comedy or something.
Ooh.
That was my thought.
Oh, okay. Did it happen?
It wasn't exactly their thing, right? They have work, they have stuff to do, but I remember that, and bless them for putting up with whatever it was like to raise me as a kid, and just be like, I will not. I'm done playing video game. No more of this. Parents, you must now talk to me about books. You must do this. This is all that I want.
Our parents, right, Michael?
Was that?
Shout out to our parents.
Yeah. Hey, shout
they
out. They
totally watch your channel now, right?
Yeah. They saw. I think they saw they said they saw the first.
Let's discuss Divine Comedy.
I don't know. Maybe they'll watch it. Maybe they'll.
I will. I can tell for your parents. Like, guys, I also did not read the Divine Comedy. And what a weird kid. I get it.
No, I was a weird kid. I'm still a weird kid, right?
It's okay. I wanted to tell you, like, as you talked about the books, and not to sound completely like a pro-Soviet agent, let me soften it by telling that in the 90s, and also with the Western culture, what came that we didn't have access to behind the Iron Curtain, and that actually is the reason why I decided to travel to a European country. And the reason why I cannot go back, I actually do agree with the Western values. So it's the education. It's books. Like, before that, we were sort of constrained to pre-chosen educational books. Even Mikhail Bulgakov was banned because he criticized Soviet regime. He ridiculed it, and he pointed out the weaknesses in it. And with the freedom of thought, freedom of expression, came actually a lot of personal growth. Okay, there were the turbulent time where people got shocked from, oh, we can buy stuff, and having stuff doesn't make people judge us. Okay, and so they hang a lot of gold around their necks, which in the Soviet time was considered to be poshla, vulgar, and distasteful. And so by having a lot of stuff on the neck, so they decided, oh no, it's Western. Now it's fashionable. But what also came with it again is education, the books. And the books that I really, really appreciated, that I didn't have access to before, is which are the books that currently are ridiculed, would be self-help books, would be books about I don't know, self-healing, about I remember my first Deepak Chopra book, which blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, 7 Rules of Success or The Secret. And then I was like, oh my God, if you visualize a thing, it will come true. Like this was my beginner introductory course of psychology. I know it's not proper. It's not Jung. Let's say we did have Jung on the shelf but Jung was too complicated for a 16-year-old, let's say,
Yes.
for a child. Like it was too complicated for me to grasp or understand. And I did already have modesty where I would be like, I understand everything. Like, no, I was like, no, I don't understand anything. I would like to learn. Like that was my mindset. So I started from basics is, yeah, if you clear your head, if you clear your thought, if you focus on a task, you can move forward in your life. And this book by Jordan Peterson, um, uh, 10 Rules for Life, right? Like
12, yeah, I think it's 12.
12, sorry, 12, sorry. I'm sorry, Jordan. 12 Rules for Life. I know he's watching. Stand up
Great.
straight, clean your room. I understand like people are ridiculing how simplistic it is. Well, but those are the basics. Like, go and wash your face with water. It already gives you sort of sensation in your body. You can move forward, start little bit, step by step. So that's how it was for me. And people who dream of coming back to the old Soviet Union rules because the metro is clean. I was like, yeah, what about actual like the ability to make this choice for yourself and slowly educate society to raise the level of conscientiousness. Like again, Jordan does it pretty well. Like just clean your room. Yeah, you're actually doing it bit by bit. You will not get to 90% percentile in conscientiousness. Yes, but you can actually shift yourself from disorderly to a little bit more orderly, and it's okay. Next generation will be better. Like just make this generative mindset work, and I think it's a better plan for the future.
Yeah. I was thinking, especially as you were saying about that this idea of these self-help books as being ridiculed. I think it's specifically Peterson who talks about that in an interview, is saying like, okay, they're essentially, self-help books are introductions to moral philosophy, and moral philosophy as something tied into psychology, right? I don't think that's the thing I've been actually thinking about recently. I've been looking into, right, of course, my research history is in the Renaissance, right? This is part of why 21st century Renaissance is the way that I've approached, I guess, this podcast framework. But I've been looking into the early modern foundations of psychology, right? And to think about how this came about as an academic discipline at all. And it comes into sort of the modern or the early modern Western world as a philosophical discipline. And it's not empirical, it's largely speculative. And it's not really until the Renaissance revives a kind of writing of history as a behavioral science, right? An idea that like, okay, you have psychology, the pattern of the soul, and how the soul behaves and how it works, right? The logos of your psyche. But this is done speculatively. It's done through logic. It's done through, reason. It's based on an Aristotelian framework, and then people just kind of reason off of that, maybe in combination, like say, at the universities, in combination with something like, details about the soul that are extracted from theology. And you kind of have that as like this speculative, rational, logical method as how psychology is done, as a discipline, way into the early modern and modern period. And you have other disciplines which do things that probably psychology would recognize more today as being, more true to our discipline of psychology. For example, as I said, history. a lot of history is written to convey moral philosophical information. So Renaissance humanism in the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries. Renaissance humanists are not writing histories in order to create catalogs of facts. They write them as teaching tools to teach people about how to act. They're very concerned with how to shape society by teaching people how to live better. That's the essence of Renaissance humanism, is teaching people how to live a more virtuous life. And part of that is by showing them the examples of people who have conveyed those virtues historically. So they, right, it's not it would not be a critical, as critical an approach to sources or material evidence as a modern historian might expect, but right, they're thinking about this in sort of early behavioral scientific terms, and they're taking a lot of it on articles of faith, but that's kind of their interest there. But a lot of it is a lot of this early psychology, and remains this way through the Enlightenment, is just kind of this speculation about what soul is like and what human beings are like. And in the 19th century, there's the German idealist movement, which also continues to speculate on what the soul is like. It's not based in any kind of empirical science. And communism, right? Soviet communism evolves out of Marx and Engels, right? Communism, which is, is inspired by Hegel. It comes out of this speculation about what the human soul and human nature and the human experience is like, but it treats it as doctrine. It has a sort of religious, in the worst sense, orientation towards what it has to say about the human condition. And it comes out of this very long, early modern into Enlightenment, into Romantic, speculative philosophical tradition. And this kind of brings me to this other question, because, right, we think like, oh, Ukraine, Belarus, Western Russia, right, that we tend to think, especially when I talk to people from Eastern Europe, it's like, oh, right, to the West is Europe. We're not Europe. Europe is over there, and we're the East, and that's the West, right? But of course, communism is something that comes from Germany, right? Like it's middle of the West. So what strikes me about, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, is like, East and West in a positioning of kind of, well, there's an Eastern way of doing things that may have been Soviet, or maybe kind of this modern authoritarian, however you'd like to package it, way of Russian way of doing things, versus a Western or a capitalist West, or somehow it's like it's a clash of two ideologies or two worldviews that come from different parts of the world, when they come from the same cultural milieu, that they're both Western ideology. And in that sense, I mean, yeah, is that something that tends to come up, right? I mean, you come from Eastern Europe. Is this something that people think about? Is this a way that people have thought about this?
Do you remember the time when they divided Berlin into
Yes.
East Berlin and West Berlin? It's like that. So they needed, even though Berlin is in Germany, they put a line, and they decided this is East and this is West. And so this way they were able to kind of name the ideology in a specific way, still being from Germany. Yeah, it's more for the appearances, in a way. It's to simplify things, because everybody knows the concept of West and East. West is there and East is there. East is where sun comes, West is there where it sets. It's like people, it's like for people it's easy to understand. It's like it's they can touch it in a way. And even though it comes from literally the same place, the same thing, they still like, no, like it's actually not the same because we put a line through it, and like we literally put the like it's as if that ritual changes anything. I understand it's ridiculous, Michael. I do get it. But people buy it. And if people buy it, it's real. It's like I don't want to make an inappropriate joke. Yeah, but if enough people believe it, it's real.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Right. There's clearly, I think that's one of the major takeaways I suppose I've had from studying a lot of what Jordan Peterson has written outside of his self-help books, but this is in his self-help books as well, right? You know, belief does matter. It's like, oh, that's what you believe, or that's what you think, or something like that. It's like, no, at a neurophysiological level, at a pharmacological level within your body's chemistry and such, it's like, belief is a material reality. That's on some level, it is real.
What real is the idea of there being West and there being East. Those two ideas are real, and the ideology part is like a thing that is attached to a real thing to give it more legitimacy. It's like to sell it better to the public.
And that these things are opposed, perhaps. Is that
yes, the fact that they are opposed, it also gives people, oh, West and East, they are opposed to each other. This means these two ideologies are also opposed to each other, even though like there are elements that coincide, but for people it's already imprinted as an opposite. Like there are some commonalities, but generally there are a lot of differences, and it was done for the purpose of framing things. I know it comes from literally the same place, but the name West and East was for it to explain to the general public later, like to make the things more salient. I think John Verweke talked about it a little bit, not exactly about West and East, but he talked about selling people the bullshit idea, or selling people an idea. So you take and write it on a white piece of paper with black, and people read it. It is intelligible to them. It's really easy to understand, and they feel like, oh my God, I understand it. They feel good about themselves because they understood it. It's easier for them. Then you take the same thing and you write it on an orange paper with yellow ink. They're like, what is that? Like, it's really hard to read, but it's also like people are so focused on trying to understand what actual words are saying that they don't understand the meaning. The brain doesn't come that far. And they're like, and they feel like, no, this information is obviously bullshit. Even though it's the same thing. Like, you simplify the idea in order for public to follow it. That's why slogans work. No?
It's very boiled down to its
You can
most
touch
essential
it
parts.
in a way. Yes,
it's easy. You can just kind of snatch it and walk away with it. Yeah. Well, maybe a 21st century Renaissance in the context of, the former Soviet world and Europe or the West or something will look like a transformation perhaps of that idea of what's East and what is West, and whether or not those things are actually opposed to one another. Kara, before we finish up for today, I'd like to just ask you a couple questions so our audience can find you, can follow your work on a number of your different channels. What can we expect as far as projects from you in the near future? You've already told us a little bit about Line by Line. So you regularly or semi-regularly, you have an ebbing and flowing schedule, let's say, with your episodes on discussing music and song lyrics. You also feature music, yes? You also make music. Do you still post some of your music?
Um, at the moment, it's a work in progress. I will start, of course, posting some of the music, and which is like female vocals combined with nature sounds,
Okay.
and in cooperation with various musicians, like with musical instruments. I really like the bass two string guitar, a blues
Hmm.
sort of vibe, which is kind of like an elevator music, but very chill. Like, I
Okay.
don't know.
All right. Something I might like to fall asleep to, or
Yes,
do work to, or
yeah, it's
study to.
chill out.
Chill out. Love it. Just kind of put it on in the background when you want to unwind from a hard day of work, something like that.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
it's a passion project because there was a lot of physical work with humming happening in my family, like
Mm,
knitting, and like and you knit and you hum, and sometimes you hum in harmony with more people, and you just like
mm,
keep knitting and doing things, and like
mm,
I grew up with a sister, and so we together like we're working with constant singing, and
mm,
I kind of want to keep that family energy going, and it's in the music. It's just like doing things with a little bit of connection to the sound and
mm,
vocal, and um, I don't know, it's something different.
mm-hmm,
That's what I can say. With the places of the podcasts. So I have been publishing my podcasts line by lines on Apple Music and Spotify podcasting
mm-hmm.
thingy. I can also give the link to that. Uh, it's already 112 episodes. There is an episode 113, which is Nothing Else Matter by Metallica.
Okay.
Really
All
good
right. All right.
conversation. I haven't published it, even though I recorded it 2 months ago. So I was busy in my own kind of real estate realm. There is another podcast which called Food for Thought,
Mm-hmm.
where I invite guests and I listen to them.
Mm,
I ask guests what their field of exploration is, what they're thinking about, or are there any ideas they have about the world, society, technology, and yeah, I listen to it. And it's short episodes, like 15 to 20 minutes, something like that.
mm-hmm.
Oh, some episodes are longer because we explored friendship, and they took a little bit longer to talk about. And a series of live streams. I discussed John Vervaeke work with people from Discord, John Vervaeke Discord community called Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. Really cool community. We meet there every week. Although the live streams are not are yet on hold until I am more flexible with my time, because I had been traveling lately a lot. What else? Yeah. Again, thank you. I'm appreciating the opportunity of not editing, but
Yeah.
also being able to talk to an interesting YouTuber.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. I think Yeah, this definitely gave me some food for thought appropriately. So anyone watching and listening, thank you very much, as always. Thank you very much to Kara. If you're interested in having some food for thought yourself on a regular basis with Kara, you can take a look at her links. They're going to be down below in the description and in the comments. Kara is also going to link our episodes back a few months ago that I was invited to speak on. We had great talks about folk songs, especially. So everyone, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Take care.